My dear Masala podcast fans, I've written a book called Bad Daughter. You surprised by the title? I think not. I've never shared such deeply personal things before. I talk about growing up in poverty. I talk about my father's violence, my mother's murder. I talk about how I turned my pain into power, navigating mental health, sexuality, spirituality, and patriarchy. Bad Daughter is my story of going from Mumbai's slums to New York's billboards. But it's your story too. What's the message of this book? It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what happened to you. You still get to have the life that you want. If you're looking for a book to move you and inspire you to change your life, type in Bad Daughter by Sangeeta Pillai on Amazon or go to my website, baddaughter.co.uk.
When students come to our Girls Who Code program, none of them have coded before. And during the first week, a student will call her teacher over and she'll say, I don't know what code to write. And the teacher will look at her screen and she'll see a blank text editor. But when the teacher presses undo on the computer, she sees, that she actually wrote something and then deleted it. So instead of the student saying to her teacher, hey, I wrote a line of code. I think the semicolon's in the wrong place. Can you help me? What did I do wrong? She rather show nothing at all. So it's this idea of perfection or bust.
Besharam, badtameez, chi, gandhi, jalhata, toba, oho, bad beti.
I'm Sangeeta Pillai, and this is the Masala Podcast. This multi-award-winning feminist podcast for and by South Asian women is all about cultural taboos, from sex, sexuality, mental health, menopause, to nipple hair, and more. This season is a US special, and it took me by surprise. You see, I interviewed these incredible South Asian American women. I expected to hear some angst around identity and belonging. Instead, they told me how comfortable they were with both their South Asian and American identity. I confess, this is not the podcast season I set out to record. It's so much more powerful. I found talking with Reshma Saujani so inspiring. She is a leading activist and the founder of Girls Who Code, as well as founder and CEO of Moms First, formerly Marshall Plan for Moms. Reshma began her career as an attorney and democratic organizer. In 2010, she surged into the political scene as the first Indian American woman to run for US Congress. She has spent more than a decade building movements to fight for women and girls' economic empowerment. Most recently, Reshma has been advocating for policies to support moms impacted by the pandemic. Reshma is also the author of international bestseller Brave, Not Perfect. Her influential TED Talk, Teach Girls Bravery, Not Perfection, has had more than 5 million views globally. Do you see what I mean when I say she's inspiring?
My parents came here as refugees from Uganda in 1973 with a huge family in Africa. The vast majority of them ended up in England. But my parents, who had just recently been arranged, because they were both engineers, they got the opportunity to come to the United States. And so they decided to come to the Midwest. That's where they built a life for themselves. And so, I grew up in America in the 80s where there wasn't a lot of brown people. There certainly weren't people whose names were Reshma. And my parents didn't know anybody. And so they struggled. They found this small, tight-knit Ugandan Asian community that we were then friends with and we would meet with every weekend and participate in Garba Ras, during Navratri and So, childhood was a lot about trying to fit in and feel like I belonged when I didn't belong. I think what happens for us is I think you pretend to be white back then because there just aren't enough people who look like you. You don't have a strong enough community, right? Now, it's different now. But back then, you didn't see people who looked like you on television. There was never have I ever. There wasn't a Mindy Kaling, right? There wasn't a Priyanka Chopra. There wasn't any of that. You didn't open up a magazine. You didn't think you were attractive. You didn't think you were, not anything. And people made fun of you. I mean, bullying, hate crimes were really real. So I think in the beginning, you really tried to make yourself small. I reached a breaking point where I had like a schoolyard fight where I got beat up, for basically being a brown girl. And it was a revelation for me that I can't be white, that I have to be me. And it really kind of unleashed activism and being an activist and fighting for those who don't have a voice or fighting for those that are vulnerable. So it was in many ways, it was such a gift. I think that if I didn't grow up that way, being bullied, being harassed, really seeing kind of racial hate up close and personal, I don't know if I'd be doing the work that I'm doing right now. Because at the same time, so much of that came with so much love, and in a community, other parts of the community, right, that really embraced you. And it also, is a lesson on how we always move towards progress and how things today are different, than when I was growing up.
Yeah. Do you remember any instances? You mentioned this bullying. What's the kind of, we don't need to get into the details of that if it's painful, but what are the sort of things that were said to you when you were a child?
Well, back then they called you a Haji, right? That was
What is a Haji?
Haji is basically a derogatory name for a brown person. Or it was like, you smell like curry, or they called you a dot head. Those were kind of the terms, right, that were used. Go back to your own country. Those were kind of the terms that were used for, the South Asian people, the derogatory terms or the racial slurs, right? That was what was really used against us then. And, I heard them all the time growing up. And I think that one day I decided I was going to fight back. And I was going to meet these two girls, for a schoolyard fight. And I got beaten up pretty badly. And I remember, when I went home, my friend had kind of dragged me home. I'm a big black guy. It was the day before 8th grade graduation. And I remember my mother just crying and looking at my father saying, you brought us here. Wow. And they didn't call the police. They didn't call the school, because they were immigrants. And part of what I had done was violated the family pact, which was to make yourself small, don't call attention to yourself, and don't fight back, basically, right? Don't stand up for yourself. Make yourself invisible. And I think for me, it was very much the beginning of not doing that anymore, and really, and wearing kind of my desiness, like very loud and proud, right? And very kind of out in the open. I wasn't not trying to be anybody but Reshma. I was not trying to hide the fact that I was a Hindu. I was not trying to hide the fact that, this was my culture and I was proud of it.
How old were you at this point, Reshma?
So probably 12, 13?
That's amazing. A lot of kids at that age haven't got that, I guess, gumption, because you're trying so hard to fit in. You're trying so hard to find your tribe, make friends, all of that. Hats off to having that kind of courage at that kind of age. That's incredible. So tell me the journey from that point on to this, incredible career you've got. Like, I'm just reading it out. There's just so many things. I had to write it down. Lawyer, politician, civil servant. I'm going to say coding expert because I don't know the words for it. But so many things. So talk us through how you went from that 12-year-old girl taking on the bullies to all of these fantastic things.
Well, that experience really set off a career of activism. So I started building organizations. The first organization I built was the Prejudice Reduction Interested Students Movement. I started really leaning into public speaking, and going, my debate club, et cetera. I knew that I wanted to be an activist, an organizer. And then when I got to college, I saw that kind of up front, right? Activism. I went to a big university. You had this thing called the Quad. And so it's where people kind of spoke out. That at that time we were fighting against apartheid, fighting against the contract with America, So I really was like, remember walking by one day being like, oh, that's me. That's what I want to be. I want to be out there. And so that was like, for me, that was the through line, that I was always speaking out. I was always organizing. I was starting organizations. I knew that I wanted, to be a warrior. And I thought that would come in the form of being a lawyer. I always wanted to go to law school. And in some ways, I think, so I went to college, I decided I wanted to go to law school. Part of that end of that experience, got exposed to politics, became, an intern in the White House, met Hillary Clinton, ended up going to the Kennedy School of Government, got my master's in public policy, was really passionate about fighting against apartheid, lived in South Africa for a while, worked on that, after Mandela came to power, then went to law school, then graduated in a lot of debt, and then I got off path. I think sometimes what happens, and I think a lot of young people can resonate with this, is like when you're saddled with student loan debt, the thing you always wanted to do that wanted to make you take up that debt in the first place is no longer in your reach, because you have to pick other jobs that pay more so that you can pay off the loans. And then I think I entered kind of like this 10-year period where my activism was my side hustle. I was still working on campaigns, I was still organizing, but it wasn't my job. And my job was really just like choking me and choking the life out of me.
What was the job at that point?
I'm a corporate lawyer. I hate it. You know what I mean? Then I'm working at a financial services organization as a lawyer. I hate it, right? None of it is, but all of it is in pursuit of trying to make money so I can pay off my student loans.
Yeah.
And I think for a while when you're young, you're like, oh, I got time, right? I got time to pursue the dream, to pursue the destiny, pursue what you're put on this earth to do. And I think I woke up kind of at age 33 being like, I don't have all that much time anymore, right? I'm not young. And that is when, for me, I decided to quit my job and take the leap and run for United States Congress. And I was the first South Asian American woman to ever run, which is wild, for United States Congress. And it was the best experience of my life.
It's incredible. That was literally the next question I was going to ask you, because I read about that and I was like, wow, the first ever South Asian American woman to run for Congress. What was that like? What was it like for you in your own mind? What was that like for other people, your family, people around you?
It was terrifying for me. And it was irritating probably for my family at first. Again, going back to that point about making yourself small. My mother was like, why are you doing that? What? I think when you're younger, you're naive enough to think that you can make anything happen. You don't do the same kind of cost-benefit analysis. I really thought I could make, shake every hand, meet every voter. And I had this ragtag group of friends and then, campaign staff. What I was doing at that time was very rebellious. Nobody ran. I was running in a Democratic primary. So nobody did that. And especially no brown girl did that. So it then attracted people who were excited about somebody that was a disruptor, like an outsider. And so many people who worked in that campaign are still work with me now, and are in my life and are my dearest, closest friends and mentees. So in many ways, it attracted a lot of really great people because I really thought that I could, like I said, meet every voter, shake every hand. And all the stuff that I was doing, I had never done before. So I had never given a campaign speech. I had never walked into a room and just talked about, my policy ideas. I had never raised money before. I had never gone on television. I had my first interview on like prime time NBC. So everything I had done, I had never done before. I never hired people, right? And now I had to hire an entire campaign staff. When you run a campaign, it's like starting and shutting down a business in a span of 10 months. And so I had to learn how to be a good manager. I had to learn how to identify talent. I had to, I had to learn how to build a plan. I had to learn how to trust people, right? So the whole experience was just incredible. And I would argue still in many ways some of the 10 best months of my life because it was all really terrifying. And I think the older I've gotten, the more I've realized I love hard things and I love scary things. Like for me, I actually feel the most alive when I wake up and be like, how do I freaking do this? You know what I mean? How am I going to figure this out? It actually makes me feel like I'm an intellectually curious person. And so I think it makes it like taps into that part of myself that I really love or like enjoy, that nerdiness,
I've been an activist my entire life. I just didn't know it. When I was younger, I was fighting with my family for the right to wear what I wanted, to cut my hair short, to not have an arranged marriage. Basically, to have the kind of life that I wanted. Now, my activism has a different shape and name and feel. I fight for the rights of South Asian women to have a voice, to be heard, to have the sorts of lives we want. My activism powers me up. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. My activism gives my voice the strength to reach the hundreds of thousands of people that I want to. My activism is what I hope to do for the rest of my days on this planet. As I do more and more, some of the projects that I'm involved in terrify me. They excite me and they terrify me. And I'll take that as a good sign. So as if that wasn't enough, you went and set up Girls Who Code in 2012. Tell us what that was about and how that came about. I've got loads of questions around it to ask you, but let's start by you telling us how and why.
Yeah, so I run this race, I lose terribly. And I realized I'm not going back to that crappy job that I did not like. I'm not going to go back to being a corporate lawyer. What can I do in public service? What are the things that I saw on the campaign trail that really moved me? And as part of when I was running for office in 2010, that's when tech was like just starting to grow and it was just starting to build. And when I looked at these tech companies, none of them were run by women, but the consumer base was female. And I was like, what is that about? And then, when I was running for office, I would go into public schools and I would go into computer science classes and robotics labs, and I would just see lines and lines and lines of boys, not a girl in sight. And because I was not a computer science major, I was like, what's going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And it pissed me off because, again, as the daughter of refugees, I've been having a job my whole life, from retail to food service to, you name it. And I knew that like so much of my dad would say, when you grow up, you should be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer.
Of course.
Of course, right? That was about, for them, being financial security.
Yeah.
And in 2010, financial security was a tech job, right? This is where the growing industry was. This is where all the opportunity was. And so not seeing girls in those classrooms made me realize like, oh, wait a minute, they're not going to get an opportunity to march to the middle class. And so that was really the inspiration when I started Girls Who Code. It was really about creating economic opportunity.
You were saying somewhere, I think in one of the articles, that teaching girls how to code has to do with bravery. Like that really stuck with me. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, as I'm building Girls Who Code, now 10 years later, we've taught over 600,000 girls to code. But in the middle of it, I get this opportunity to give a TED Talk. For a public speaker or for an activist, like TED, it's like going to the Super Bowl. Like once in a lifetime, we're going to go, you better bring it. And I was like, okay, what do I want to talk about? And there was this kind of story that every Girls Who Code teacher would tell me. And it went something like this, which is, when students come to our Girls Who Code program, none of them have coded before, right? So they're all starting from this blank slate. And during the first week, a student will call her teacher over and she'll say, I don't know what code to write. And the teacher will look at her screen and she'll see a blank text editor. So if she didn't know any better, she thought that her students spent the past 20 minutes just staring at the screen. But when the teacher presses undo on the computer, she sees, that she actually wrote something and then deleted it. So instead of the student saying to her teacher, hey, I wrote a line of code. I think the semicolon's in the wrong place. Can you help me? What did I do wrong? She rather show nothing at all. So it's this idea of perfection or bust. And so I tell this around the TED stage, and I'm inundated with messages of women who say, yeah, I do this too. I erase the code of my life, which means I give up before I even try. So I write a book about it, Brave Not Perfect, do a podcast about it, go on a tour that I'm still talking about. And, part of the aha for me was that coding is a metaphor for bravery. When students come to our class, they think they're not smart enough to code, they won't be able to do it, they do it, and they get comfortable with failure because all about coding is just iteration, 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 iteration. And so then you're like, wow, like if I can do that, what are all the other things that I can do that I've talked myself out of? And it unleashes a lifetime of bravery. And when I mean bravery, I don't mean bravery of like even running for office or saving a baby from a burning building, but the bravery to raise your hand when you don't know exactly what the answer is. You know, the bravery when you're walking down the street and someone bumps into you, for you not to say, "Oh, I'm sorry," right? It's the bravery in all the small moments of our life that we need to be able to like tap into, unleash, exercise. So when like the big moments come, we're ready.
100%. And I think you touched upon this, and I've kind of thought about this and read about it so much, because that bravery is what lets you or doesn't let you put your hand up in a classroom or apply for a job in the office or speak up in a meeting. All of these come from the same place, don't they?
Yeah.
Because as women, I think you say this, we're socialized towards perfection. So in our heads, we've got to be like 1,000% before we'll even kind of put our hand up.
Exactly. I mean, that's what is happening when you're in a room and you're listening or in a meeting or a lecture or whatever, and they say, "Oh, anybody have any questions?" You may have 100 questions in your mind, but you're thinking, well, what's the question that I'm going to sound smart? What's the question that I'm going to ask that people aren't going to think it's dumb, right? Like you're trying to get the answer right, even to ask a question.
Yes.
And so that is something we deeply have been socialized to do, and we really have to unlearn, because failure is just a gift. It's a privilege. Like, you don't learn unless you fail, and you don't learn unless you ask questions. So if you think asking a question is making you sound not smart, and so you're terrified of asking a question, then you're just going to gravitate towards the things that you know how to do. And you're never going to grow. And that is like deeply problematic, I think, for us scaling, our potential. And so it's funny, it's like we are all as women qualified, if not overqualified, right? For most of the things, if not all the things that we do. But still kind of we question ourselves because we don't question. And it's kind of, so we think that like we're out of the joke, right? Or we don't have the information, or something else is going on, right? Because we don't kind of ask the questions to get the knowledge to recognize, oh, no, I got this.
And I suspect it's also, one is we're socialized to do this. And also when you kind of look at how boys and girls are brought up, boys are told to go and, jump and fail. And it's okay. You fall down, you get the bruises, you come back and you try again. So you see kind of boys at all ages kind of just going for it without really worrying about it.
Yeah.
Whereas girls, every little thing, and I know this, every woman I know, pretty much, can I do this? What happens if this doesn't go right? This whole kind of tsunami of questions and self-doubt before you've even stepped out,
Well, also because we haven't learned swag. Like the story I tell in my book too is like, when boys are little, I was at my son's class this morning, and the swag that they have at 8, the confidence, the bravado, right? And that's how they're encouraged, right? Whereas we're encouraged to be likable, to be small, to be humble, to be kind, to be, and so all those things. So we don't develop that sense of swag, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even call it confidence per se, because it's almost like we kind of know the answer, but basically to say it with a sense of, oh, I got this, I can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And boys, the story I tell about, like, at an award ceremony, like boys are like dabbing, like, yeah, me, I got it, I got the award, right? Woo! And girls are like, oh, me? Really?
Yeah.
And we've kind of been doing that our whole lives. I mean, the amount of times, I play tennis, and I make myself be like, that was a baller shot, to myself or to my coach, right? But when I'm playing with other women, I'm like, great shot. They're like, oh, I got lucky.
Yes.
We immediately like have to make our success small.
Absolutely. I'm just nodding away because it resonates so deeply with me as well. I started this podcast without kind of knowing anything about podcasting. I've won like a zillion awards and I get written about. But the minute anybody says, oh, your podcast is great. Oh, yeah,
Or you think?
You think, oh, thanks so much. Not that, yes, I work bloody hard for it, but it's so difficult. Like, even when I say the words, I feel discomfort in my body. because it's so deeply conditioned.
But you have to do it. Like it's so, I'm stepped off of being CEO of Girls Who Code. I'm building my next movement, Moms First. And I, I'll go to big audiences, and I do this intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, as I'm building my second movement, it's been hard, right? Because investing in women, we don't do.
No.
It's always freaking harder for us, right? It just is. And it has nothing to do with our capability or performance. And so I say, in social entrepreneurship, I am the Elon Musk of social entrepreneurs. Like what I built with Girls Who Code with my hands on my own, on my back, right? Like no one's done. And I figured it out. And I built a scalable organization that's global, and that's a model. And so I have another idea that I've incubated and thought through. It should just be like, okay, where do I send the check? And so I'll say in big groups, like, I'm the social entrepreneur. I'm the Elon Musk of social entrepreneurship. And it's funny, my development director's like, every time you say that, I'm like, oh, is she really going to say that? And I'm sure half the women in the audience are like,
Yes.
damn, like
Yes.
she said what? But I'm doing that to give you permission to do the same,
Yes.
right? Because I think that that's like the thing we have to turn on its head, which is like we've been acting small for too long. We've been being grateful for scraps for too long. We've been shrinking our ability and to make other people feel secure for too long. And now we have to just be real bold about it, about our performance, what we've achieved, right? Our successes, our wins.
And do you think it's as simple as
Talking about it in rooms, talking about it to each other, talking about it in big spaces? How do we do this?
The generation ahead of us, it was true. There probably was just one spot for one. So there was a lot of competition. And I think in many ways that generation knew that to be likable to men, we had to play to their ego and not actually have all that swag. Things have changed. We are in a new place. And so now there is plenty of room for all of us. And so you see that. I don't know if you feel this. I have such a huge sisterhood. I have so much love, so much support, so much from women. I have no feelings of competition or issues. Like I think we've moved into a different place where we realize, okay, like we're in the room, now what? And I think the now what piece is this idea of like we have got to basically celebrate our accomplishments and share them with one another, right? And teach one another how to actually be loud, be bold, take up space. And I think that so it's like, and I think the women, the generation under like below us, they get it. Even the way that they just look at themselves in the mirror. When I looked at myself in the mirror when I was in my 20s, there was I was like so horrible to myself.
Yeah.
And the way that they even just embrace their own beauty and their own bodies and their own choices.
Yes.
They don't feel encumbered in the way that we were. But they still, I think, we're still kind of racked by this sense that we're not we need to be asking the question of like, wait a minute here, like we are 75% of valedictorians, we get 20% more bachelor's degrees, like I'm crushing it. I know when I'm in a room, I'm pretty much the smartest person there. What's up?
So
right? Like we need to like sit in that inquiry. And I do think that part of it is about the fact that like we make ourselves seem small. We think we're not. I mean, I have this whole thing about imposter syndrome. I hate the word, and I will refuse to use it. And it's all a big lie. And I'm doing a big speech about this, but like, this is like my thing. Like, it's like we have to see these as tactics and strategies used against women, and like, how do we not participate in that anymore?
Hey, I wanted to pause this episode for a minute to share something that I'm really excited about. Podcasting changed my life. I went from typing into Google, what is a podcast? Yes, I did that. To creating the multi-award-winning Masala podcast. And now I'd like to share some of my knowledge with you. I'm starting podcasting masterclasses on my website. And one of them's been created especially for women podcasters. Just go to my website, soulsutras.co.uk, and look under courses. Or email me at podcasting@soulsutras.co.uk and I'll share details with you. I look forward to helping you on your podcasting journey.
Hi, मैं हूँ कबीर.
और मैं हूँ योगी.
Yes, we are two guys. And yes, we are in love.
इंडिया में गे होना और एक गे कपल होना क्या होता है? Together we will try and decode that अपनी देसी भाषा में.
With generous helpings of Desi style Ashiki, only in our podcast Shuddh Desi Gay, a Spotify original, produced by RM Word Pictures.
New episodes out every Monday.
When you were talking about setting up companies, again, there's something else you said which stuck with me, that men and women who create companies do it for different reasons. And this is a while ago, I think you said this, and you were saying about, for men, it's they create companies to replace their mothers, which made me laugh.
When I say this, yes.
I know. And women are, let's say, for the majority, kind of more empathy-led or conscience-led or whatever. Do you still believe this?
And I don't think it's actually a bad thing, actually.
Yeah.
I think that we see a problem in our, actually, and I've seen this for my girls for a decade.
Yeah.
If you sit with my students, you will know they are 2 years ahead of what's happening in that generation. So like they were talking about bullying 8 years ago. They were talking about climate change 6 years ago. They were talking about what's wrong with Instagram, algorithm 4 years, right? It's so mental health, because they're paying attention to what's broken and saying, how do I fix it? And I think that same with me as an entrepreneur, right? As a social entrepreneur, I'm fixing things that women are facing. I'm basically seeing problems and saying, my playground are women and girls and the problems that they experience, the roadblocks that are in front of them. And I think that happens even in business. There's not enough beauty manufacturers. How do I solve that problem? Because I really want to find a better foundation for my skin tone, because right now nothing exists for me, right? I am in the middle of perimenopause, right? There's not enough products and solutions out there for me, right? How do I solve for that? But I think that it's really, we have a bigger lens on it. And I joke, and I think sometimes men are trying to solve their own individual pain point. I joke, it's like my husband can't multitask the way that I can multitask, right? But he's a great delegator. And so much about entrepreneurship for men is about delegation. Like my husband would be perfectly happy if he could sit in front of his computer and get everything, his house cleaned, his food delivered, his dog walked, right? Yeah. And so literally his world is how do I do that? Yeah. And quite frankly, damn, we should be doing the same thing because we're doing all this stuff on our own. And if we were better actually about this, we would have more time. Yeah.
Playing down my achievements, playing down my successes. I've been doing that for years. As a South Asian woman, I learned very young to play small. So if someone compliments me on a great outfit, I'll say, "Oh, I just found it." The same goes for my work. Despite having a super successful podcast and winning multiple awards, I will always answer compliments about my work with it just happened. Not taking into consideration the years of relentless work that I've put in, the late nights, the quite literally back-breaking work sometimes, the endless learning about podcasting without being from the industry. None of that is taken into consideration. I will admit this to you right here, right now. I really struggle with taking credit for my own successes. However, I'm determined to do things differently. I will take up space. I will own my own voice. And I will own my many, many successes that are surely coming my way. Self-belief is hard enough, but if you're a brown woman, it's a lot harder. Like South Asian, whatever, South Asian American, South Asian British, Indian. Why is it that much harder? It's like this whole another layer of culture.
My father never said to me, "You are so brilliant. You can do everything." He believed that. What my father said to me is, "You've got to work hard." When I lost my race, he would send me the 20 things that I did wrong. To this day, I could be on the front page of the New York Times, which I have been. And he won't call me and be like, oh my God, that was amazing. I know he has it. I know he's read it. In fact, I will find him often on my talks at the bottom, Reshma Saujani. You know what I mean? He knows exactly what I'm doing, exactly what I'm saying, exactly the difference that I'm making, but he will never build my ego. And I think sometimes, right, we need to be told you're great.
Of course we do.
You're exceptional. You're one in a million. Like, we need to be told that, but it's not the way we've been raised. Now, I would argue, for me, it served me to get that hard, tough love, right? Because that is what drives me. And I do think it's put my ego in check. And that is a little cultural, right? We are as a Hindu, right? I serve God, right? Like, this is not about me. This is about him and what I'm put on this earth to do, right? In the service of him. And so I think in that sense, culturally, it's good, but it's not everybody operates that way, you know? And I've learned this as a CEO, like, it's like my dad's basically saying, you know, congratulations for doing your job, right? But we know that when we're managing a team, you gotta be like, thank you, that's amazing. You gotta send them flowers. You gotta like give them their, you know, their kudos because that their recognition, because that's what motivates people.
Absolutely. And I guess culturally, because we're taught that, oh, your ego will get too big, or, you know, we never praise the kids because, oh, that, you know, what is it that say, your head will get too big for your body. But I think personally that it would be nicer if we changed that a little bit about our culture, that we told our kids that, hey, my God, what a whatever that animal you just drew is amazing, or whatever, you know.
And I think the other thing in our culture, and I've been thinking about this a lot as a mother, our culture, like, we don't hug, we don't kiss.
No.
We don't say I love you. We withhold affection. And, you know, when I first had my children, my son would literally just stare at me all the time. And it used to freak me out, that like focus. Or, you know, my kids are super attached to me all the time. They're on top of me. You know what I mean? My kids, my dog, my husband, everybody. You know what I mean? And I'm like picking one off by the other. And it used to sometimes bother me because I didn't feel like I had time to breathe. And a friend of mine said, if your biggest problem is your kids love you too much, you don't have any problems. And I realized too that, like, for me, I do, and I also now suffocate them with love in the way that I didn't get that same type of attention, affection, I should say, right? But I realize as I'm watching them, they're so secure and confident. They don't have, you know, my son could be on a playground, nobody could play with him. He does not care because he's like, you know what, my mom and dad love me. I got my family. We missed out on that.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
We
and
really
so
did.
much of our own insecurities, doubts, come from the fact that we were not just unconditionally loved and knew that we were loved, but we didn't know it. Right? That is the generational trauma that we have to not continue.
I remember when I was younger and living in India, I'd watch Western films on TV, and I'd be amazed that people were constantly hugging and kissing each other. Of course, if it was romantic kissing, my parents would tell me off loudly, saying, "What are these dirty things you watch?" And I would immediately change the channel. But it wasn't just romantic touching. I found scenes of parents hugging kids so alien, because that never happened in my home or the homes of people around us. Love was shown through so many other ways. My mum would cook my favorite dishes, for example. Or I'd hear her telling the neighbors how well I'd done in school, which she'd never tell me. Love was never shown through physical acts of affection. No hugs, no kissing, no nothing. And as I've grown up, I've realized that I'm a very physical sort of person, and I would have really loved to be hugged. Isn't that sad? I'd love to speak to you about the Moms Project, the Marshall Plan for Moms, right?
Now moms first, yes.
Tell me more about it. It's about kind of getting the world to appreciate women's work, right? Whether it's at home or outside.
I mean, basically it's, listen, like, we are never getting to gender equality
Yeah.
until we have paid leave, affordable childcare, and pay equity. So if you look at the trajectory of a woman, quite frankly, anywhere in the world,
Yeah.
she crushes middle school, she's top of her class in college, she's highly sought after, you know what I mean, at any company she goes to. And then the minute she becomes a mother, she's pushed out of the workforce.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why now for 3, 4, 5 decades, you know, you have the most highest educated, you know what I mean, cohort of women, but like you have 5 times more women leaving the workforce, you know what I mean, than we've had in the past 5 years, because you are basically doing 2.5 jobs and there's no structural support.
Yeah.
And so that was a big aha for me during the pandemic. And so I stepped off of being the CEO of Girls Who Code. And I said, you know, I can teach 1 million girls to code, but if I don't help their mothers, if I don't change the structure, if we keep trying to fix women, because the way we've dealt with, again, trying to understand why do we have this constant leaky pipeline? Why are we not at 50%, you know what I mean, of Fortune 100 CEOs women? Why we don't have a female president in the United States? And again, this is the global problem, right? Where you don't, when you look at the top level of leadership, you know, or the top of pay equity, or even, you know what I mean, home ownership, right? We're not there. Even though if you look strictly at our education or our earning potential, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so there's a direct correlation with motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the way you solve that are these 3 things. And I think the way we've been trying to solve it is by saying to women, what's your problem? You just need a little more confidence. You need to get a mentor. You got to color code your calendar. Like, it's been about fixing women and not saying, oh, well, actually, we've never designed workplaces to ever work for you. That's why, you know what I mean? You're sliding back. So we're on a mission to get paid leave and affordable childcare in as many places and spaces by 2028. So 1, we're working with companies. So we've launched something called the National Business Coalition on Childcare to start getting companies to start subsidizing and supporting childcare, treating childcare the way that you treat healthcare. You wouldn't go work for an employee that wasn't providing some form of healthcare for you and your family, because it's just fundamental. And, you know, in the world, you know, 40% of parents are in debt because of childcare. You know, it's often the largest cost center, I should say, in countries where childcare is not being provided. So childcare care in general is critical for women's participation in the labor force, because most women work to work.
Absolutely. And again, adding a cultural lens to that, mums kind of worked around us as South Asian girls, you know, growing up. But there was very rarely any value attached to their labor. You know, mums woke up first thing in the morning, they made your breakfast, they gave you their lunch, and she was waiting for you when you came home, whatever, you know, whether you're a traditional mum or you went to work, you still did all the work. And there was never any value attached to that.
And guilt, right? Like, I mean, I think about my mother, like, she was an engineer. She's amazing. She was so good at her job, but every day she had to be like, I hate working. Because for them, like, success was being able to stay home and take care of your kids. I mean, that's very much a cultural thing, but they couldn't afford to do that. And in reality, the thing is, they really did love their work.
Yeah.
I mean, my mother retired at like 75, like long after we were gone. So it was never about us. She actually wanted to work, but she didn't have the support that she needed. Now, one of the things I think is interesting for my family is my father did a lot of unpaid labor. My dad did the cooking. He did my laundry, right? They did have gender parity in unpaid labor because they had to, because they were poor, working class as they struggle. So my dad did pick me up from school. He was very engaged and very involved. So in many ways, their marriage or their relationship, it was an ideal for me of what the world should, quite frankly, look like. But I think when you're struggling, you have to do that.
What about you? Because you've talked about failure, we've talked about kind of the perfectionism. Any kind of setbacks apart from the Congress episode you told me about that have helped you in your own journey?
Oh my God, so many steps. I mean, listen, I had 10 years of fertility journey. I wanted to be a mother so bad, and it was not easy for me. But it was, again, I think I learned what pain and heartache is when you want something so bad and that you feel like the world is conspiring for you. And when you have to shop, I mean, I would have a miscarriage and an hour later be in a room full of donors having to raise money for Girls Who Code, or be in a room full of girls having to speak to them. Like, I never got to take care of my own self and my own pain because I thought that this was the price that I had to pay for making the world a better place. And so I never really got to sit in many ways with my own suffering. You know, right now I'm in the practice of like deeply studying the Bhagavad Gita and really kind of learning about this. And, you know, my guru or my teacher saying to me, it's like, we can't actually learn and have compassion for other people's suffering until we have compassion for our own. And I think I've spent most of my life not actually having compassion for my own suffering because it was always something I had to move through to get to where I was going. And that has been a big failure. Because I think what happens is then you get on a mind-body loop and you're disconnected from your heart. I think I've failed on self-care most of my life.
Yeah.
Like I get an F,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, on like self-care. And
Yeah.
and I'm and just like any, like I was just watching a basketball fan that I really like, this guy Giannis that I really love was giving a talk about this. Someone said, "How does it feel to keep losing all these games?" And he's like, "It's not failure, right? It's like it's basically driving towards a goal, and you kind of miss your goal sometimes, and then you learn, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't ever put yourself in the position
Yeah.
to have these goals that you will miss, you don't learn. And that's the thing. I think for a lot of us as women, we don't actually really put ourselves out there to fail because we're terrified that it will break us.
Absolutely.
And then we miss out on our biggest potential.
Tell me, Reshma, if 5-year-old Reshma was sitting here, what would this Reshma say to that Reshma?
I think I would, I would definitely say be comfortable in your own skin. You know, I would still say focus on bravery, not perfection.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Any words or wisdom or anything for all the listeners of Masala Podcast who I have no doubt will be listening to you thinking, oh my God, she's amazing.
I mean, I would just say again, I think pursue failure, pursue making mistakes, right? Don't I waited till I was 33 to take the biggest leap in my life. And maybe I do have maybe regrets that I actually didn't go for what I wanted earlier, that I didn't understand or learn that lesson. I think the second thing is that like pursue hard things. Pursue the things that terrify you. Like sit in your own comfort and like that's where you should go. And I think the third thing is, especially for all of our brown girls, is like have fun. Find joy. Like at the end of the, and trust me, I'm like 47, so it's like and now I needed the Ivy League degree. I needed the recognition. I needed to prove probably to my father or my mother, right, that I was worthy. And now, I always say like, after I built Girls Who Code, I don't need to do anything else in my life. I'm good. And so I'm at this place now, and I'm on the spiritual journey right now, which is bringing me so much joy because it's about me and my own personal growth and not an external accolade that I need or that I think I need. And it's such a gift to feel that free now. I'm in the journey, so I'm still unlearning my bad practices or my bad habits, but like I would just encourage people to pursue that in their life early.
Thank you so, so much, Reshma. It's been an absolute joy speaking to you. You're inspiring, you're kind of life affirming in so many ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for listening to Masala Podcast. Masala Podcast is part of my platform Soul Sutras, dedicated to celebrating and supporting South Asian women. This is a space for all of us bad betis who don't do as we're told. This is where we get to celebrate our culture our way and be exactly who we want to be. I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch via email at soulsutras.co.uk or my website soulsutras.co.uk. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter. Just look for Soul Sutras. Masala Podcast was created and presented by me, Sangeeta Pillai, produced by Anushka Tate, opening music by Sunny Robertson.
Besharam, Badtameez, Gandhi, Hi, Bad Beti.
I'd love to share this podcast that I enjoy, Tuck It Out with Ami Tucker. It's all about South Asian trailblazers. Ami and her guests talk about the messiness of growing up South Asian. We all know about that. They also talk about how being South Asian has shaped their personal and professional journeys. Go listen to Tuck It Out with Ami Tucker wherever you get your podcasts.